My presentation today is a kind of then and now piece about obsolescence management because I'm an old man and I've lived through some of this. It's my own personal experiences. I'm having to put a bit of poetic license in because there's people in here who actually were sitting near me when these things happened. And it's a bit of obsolescence management basics. So I have been lucky that I worked alongside and for world-class engineers and managers and have served some pretty demanding customers. And I wish to pass that experience on to others, particularly within the engineering community, because people, skills and process obsolescence are factors often overlooked in the world of obsolescence management, but they are perhaps the biggest risk of all. I hope that you get a few useful sound bites to take back to your day job. And I'll be here all day if you want to talk to me later. So, how has obsolescence management got to where it is now? Was there a big bang or an evolutionary process? One view, and thanks to Rob for this, is that on the first day, God created engineering, and he concentrated on hardware and on software. On the seventh day, he rested, when he should have been considering long-term support and obsolescence. He had not thought of long-term support yet. I hope you're not offended if there's anybody in here that's particularly religious. An alternative view is that obsolescence management was a buried feature in the development of engineering and of man, and it's only recently been recognised as a specialist skill. I've chosen some particularly emotive images. I would think any female in the audience will not be happy with being an ancestor of a toaster, which I believe that is, and I'm not sure my poor domestic skills, I'm not sure if that's Hoover or what it is. And I haven't worked alongside many of those in my career, but I'd like to. Another image from this that's particularly important, I'm not sure if that's working, is that there are still people, not anybody in this room I hope, that is at the bananas eating monkey level of obsolescence management. We need to get those people into this room and bring them forward. So there are two conflicting views, the Big Bang or the evolution. And I'm trying to emphasise that within this short presentation. So let's move on. It's not really important how you see obsolescence management having started, but it is important that you recognise how it's moved on in an engineering context. So when I started in the early days of obsolescence management, it was about data. It was about parts lists, and it was about lists of components, and part numbers, and correctness of data. And sadly, most of that ended up in a cupboard. And the satisfaction for the projects was merely to tick a box. It wasn't about actually making a difference and moving forward. In many companies, experienced or mature engineers were the guys doing this work, and it was seen as an admin job with very little recognition and almost zero future prospects. Now, I recall those times well. I was an obsolescence strategy manager for an avionics company. I was responsible for 8 senior engineers. I had many cupboards of data. I worked with multiple tools, and we were drowning in data from more than 250 different products. And then executive leadership would come into my office and wind me up, make me cross with silly questions like, well, Ian, what is the obsolescence strategy? And I would answer, right, do we only have one product and one customer? That reception didn't go down very well. That conversation was very short. The second conversation was, well, Ian, who owns obsolescence then? And I would respond, everybody does. It's not engineering who created the product. It's not procurement who are trying to buy the materials. It's not operations who are trying to build the product. And it's not marketing who sold the product. We're all responsible for obsolescence. They didn't really like that answer much either. But the message here is that executives knew of obsolescence management, but not how to use it. This would have been around the year 2000 in my case. So how did we feel? Well, we never got recognised for the potential cost avoidance or cost reduction or contribution to customer service and goodwill. We were subservient, secondary, servile, submissive, and Cinderella. We never got the golden coat or the go to the party either. We never got that bit. And when you're at a party and someone says to you, Ian, what do you do? And I used to say, well, this is what I do. And they would look at me blankly and they would say, you could see their eyes glazing over and they would say, is he a rubbish collector? Or is he a data manager, a librarian? And then they'd look blankly at you and feel sorry for you. But jumping forward, the obsolescence management role is not always defined with those two words. But if any of these terms I'm about to share with you are used, then obsolescence management will be needed by the owner of that department. So it could be hidden under integrated logistics support, project management, through life support, contractor availability or capability, supply chain management, capability development, asset management, and servitization. So the good news is you can see that every department of your business needs you. Obsolescence management is no longer a nice to have, it's a fundamental to understand your business risks and future operation. For many companies, the support order book far outweighs the value of new business projects. Support is not the small part of the business where people go to retire. It's the core of the supportability. An example again from my own personal experience, I went to a 25-year award ceremony where I was lucky enough to get an award. I sat alongside a senior business sector VP who at least 4 people in this room know, who said to me, hello Ian, pleased to meet you. I know of you and I totally support what your team is doing. And I ask every team who comes to me with new business whether they've spoken to you. And I said to him, that is good news. But the problem with that process is you haven't spoke to me to make sure they're telling the truth. But we were making progress. This was the year 2004. Today's obsolescence management guy needs to be a leader with the ability to be creative, to think outside the box, deliver new ideas, be involved in the community, participate in high-level new product and service development, and deliver real value from obsolescence output, not just data. We've talked about data enough earlier. And success brings further opportunity. I was reading on good old social media last week, so this must be true. I don't know who actually said this, that the responsibility of leadership is not to come up with the ideas. The responsibility of leadership is to create an environment in which great ideas can thrive. When you go to see senior execs, they're expecting you to change the business, not them to have to do it themselves. So my advice is step up and take this challenge by participating wherever you can. Information, not data. Leaders want solutions, as I just said, and options, not a list of issues, even if they are prioritised and prettily reported as we get from the obsolescence management tools. Obsolescence management tools are excellent, but it's the actions from the reports that make a difference. It's how you interpret that information. But beware, in my experience, some executives have very short attention spans and can easily lose interest. And if you cannot make a quick impact, you may find yourself leaving the meeting very quickly. And I have some experience of this. Be prepared for challenging questions and robustly supporting your suggestions. If the product is improved, a rough ride, a tough time is worth it. You might be surprised how valuable your input is. Another real example from me. It's Friday evening, I'm sitting at home, it's 10 o'clock at night. I don't want my work phone to ring, but it does. It's a colleague of mine in Malaysia. It says, Ian, 2 years ago, you pulled a rabbit from a hat and made it possible to sell a very old product again. I'm talking to this customer, he can't wait for the new product. Can you build the old one? So I said, absolutely not. But I have some good news. In the 2 weeks you've been away, one of our standard products has been subtly changed with some COTS parts and is now not only affordable but deliverable in that time frame. The conversation wasn't very long, but it was a positive one. We could meet the customer need and the delivery. So on Monday morning, I was summoned to the MD's office, something that happened fairly often, with my boss, the engineering director, who said, thank you, Ian, for your contribution to the work last week, where we've secured a £5 million order with a very difficult customer. The timeline is now 2008. Now, having worked in obsolescence management as long as I have, I thought it was important to talk about the CV of an obsolescence management professional. What skills does an obsolescence management specialist need? Firstly, I believe you need some technical understanding of your company's product, but you don't need necessarily deep design experience. Was component engineering manager. I'm not a trained engineer, but I know what I know, and I know how to get access to things that I don't know about. I think it's vitally important to be well connected and to offer different thinking sometimes, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. I think component engineers way back weren't good at networking. They are much better now. You need to be close to your supply chain, to work with marketing and business development, with support teams, manufacturing, as well as new product development. There's loads of opportunities to show what you know and how you can help the business. And accept that reporting and presenting direct to board, senior guys, and face-to-face with customers will be needed. And it's part of your personal development. You'll get more comfortable with it the more you do it. Occasionally you'll get beaten up, but that's life, isn't it? I'm sure you'll be fine. So let's use the example of a university-recognised clever man, Albert Einstein, to demonstrate some of these points. Firstly, Einstein's talents were not clear. He didn't speak till he was 4, and he didn't read till he was 7. His teachers labelled him slow and mentally handicapped. But he went on to to be awarded a Nobel Prize in Physics. He talked sense. I think many of us would agree with the second bullet here. The only source of knowledge is experience. I'm not sure it's the only, but it is a very valuable one. The next one's a little bit off the wall. This is an example of someone who thinks radically. When I was young, I found out that the big toe always ends up making a hole in a sock, so I stopped wearing socks. I'm not sure how relevant that is to an obsolescence manager, but it's an example of the way his mind thinks make the problem go away. And lastly, I've never heard this one, but I saw it only last week. I never said half the crap people said I did. And that's extremely relevant for component engineering managers, in my opinion. So the message about the person is, if you're looking for obsolescence management resource, they may be hard to identify. You may find eccentrics, but that can be good. And if well treated, these guys can provide real value. I'm not going to overlap with what Ulrich was saying, but in terms of future impacts, I think there are many industry-wide and discipline-specific changes in the world of obsolescence management. These are reflected in a new member request to the International Institute from people like Asset Guardian and EU Automation, involving in automation and robotics, and increasingly recognised project management companies, big household names like IIOM, HKA, Babcock, Kinetic, Atkins and HCP. I apologise, they're all English companies. I don't know the equivalent companies in other countries. So let's look at these things very quickly. In terms of IoT and Industry 4, I think for a component engineer and obsolescence specialist, there's going to be a focus on maintenance of operational equipment and process equipment. I think automated cars will lead to development of new products like new data buses, displays, high temperature electronics and safety critical systems. Over-the-air software is something I'm particularly interested in because I thought it was going to be a major issue in terms of moving towards connected cars. But there's been some great success from people like Tesla, and hopefully some of that will spin back into the traditional obsolescence management sectors. But as Rob and I were saying last week, there's been some terrible examples of over-the-air crashing and burning. So I'm still a little bit, I don't like that term, crashing and burning, coming from the aerospace industry. That's a very sad, that's just not one that's used. Another recent development is building information modelling in the UK now. You actually have to treat the infrastructure and construction of a building or an airport as a through life support contract. So they're starting to think about the resources around people and training and documentation, not so much component-led, but system thinking. So for me, that's quite an interesting one. And this has led to two significant IIOM developments. One is this push towards international growth. I think the Brits, even to a lesser extent Europe, think it's only us and the US who understand obsolescence management. I'm not finding that to be the case. I'm getting very intelligent feedback from people all around the world. And the second thing is professional development. We've created the first level certificate for technicians and low level people coming into obsolescence. We're working on a higher level above that. So for me, I still see some very positive things happening in the world of obsolescence management to come, which I think will benefit defence, transportation, energy, automation, aerospace, which are our kind of traditional sectors. So a significant message for you would be, no matter how capable you are, working with peers can bring new thinking. And look to lead and excel. This is a mixed audience here, so I don't know how many people here would know some of these characters, so I'll explain them to you. This guy here is by far the greatest driver in the world, and he's English. And the guy alongside him is the world's most expensive footballer, but not necessarily the best footballer in the world. I'm not saying who is. And these two guys were photographed at a basketball game. So my lesson here is you can learn from experts in similar businesses. These two guys are looking at experts in a sport that they're not even involved in. And my personal experience of this was I was asked to work on an MOD contract called SKIOS, Seeking Integrated Operating Supportability, where a whole number of defence contractors were asked to work together to share resources, tools and best practice. Things have got to change. You need to share. You'll only win by sharing. I believe it's important to be radical as well. James Dyson here, with his vacuum cleaners and hand dryers, now visible worldwide, but his ideas and technology were widely derided, not well respected very early on, and as I think it was always said, now he's developing an electric car. 400 engineers, already spent 2 billion, but not told anybody yet. So aspire to his leadership and his creative thinking. And this guy here. Now, the last example is of a famous musician you may know as Eric Clapton. Now, according to my iPhone predictive text, he is Eric Laptop, but let's forget that for now. And this is when he used to be able to play well. He didn't produce rubbish, but that's another story. The message I'm trying to give you about Eric is he's a very versatile player. His work covers many styles, from 1920s blues originals to classic rock, reggae and country. I believe obsolescence management professionals need to be this versatile, but perhaps not copy Eric's past life of excess. So my final message really is to succeed in obsolescence management, I believe you need 4 things. An awareness of your company's products. You need inspiration, because I can promise you it can be a tough journey at times. You need to radically challenge the requirements when necessary. That's the customer requirements. Often you've got more scope to change, as David was saying, than you think you have. People will over-specify things. You'll get a requirement for the aircraft, not the different areas within it. So the radar, the avionics bay, the cockpit, a completely different environment. You have a lot more scope than you think you have. And the last is to be versatile, to comfortably mix with anybody. You never know where that next piece of important information will come from. So proudly speak of the obsolescence management community. You're no longer the rubbish collector or the librarian. Maybe you're a junior medic now. You're seen as someone who can actually make things better. And the title obsolescence director is one that certainly wasn't even conceived when I came into the discipline. So I do think we've come a long way. Thank you.